Hi, my name's Al and today we're going to get back to basics. Just going to show you a couple of simple things, simple maintenance tasks, and also go through the whys and wherefores of using grease, anti-sieze, Loctite and a torque wrench. Here we're just going to take a wheel out of the bike and put it back in. It's dead easy, but it often gets fluffed up. First of all, change to the hardest gear at the back, so that's the smallest sprocket. Undo the lever, move the mech out of the way, take the wheel out. Dead simple. Whilst we've got the wheel out, we're just going to take a quick look at the quick release. If you wind the nut off the end, there should be a spring as well. Pull the skewer out, there'll be a spring here as well. Now these can seize inside the axle, so it's a good idea to lubricate these. Now this is where you use anti-sieze, if you've got it. So a bit of a dip in the pot, that's all you need. And that will lubricate the skewer as you push it through. Now it's very important that you have your springs orientated correctly. So the small part should face in towards the hub. If you put it the wrong way around, that way around, then it will get jammed in the dropouts and your wheel won't sit in properly. So make sure you've got that right. We can refit it into the bike. Whilst refitting a wheel is really simple, it is important to get it right. If you don't do it up tight enough, your wheel will drop out, and if you don't install it correctly, so it's properly straight in the dropouts, then it doesn't matter how well your brake and your gears are set up, they're just not going to work properly. So if you're using a work stand, make sure you pull the wheel up good and hard into the dropouts before you close the lever. If you've got the bike on the floor, put a bit of pressure down on the saddle from above before you close it, just to make sure everything's lined up properly. If you're new to bikes, fitting a set of pedals can be fraught with danger. The first thing you really need to remember is that the left-hand pedal, which is marked with an L, and the left-hand crank have anti-clockwise threads, a left-hand thread. So in order to tighten the pedal, you need to turn it in an anti-clockwise direction. If you get it wrong, you're going to mangle your crank. Next, we need to remember to apply some anti-sieze onto the threads of the pedal. This will help stop it creaking, and it will mean that it will be easy to remove it further down the line. This is a good case for using anti-sieze. You could use grease, but anti-sieze is really designed for this kind of scenario where lubrication isn't required. When you go to fit the pedal, screw it in by hand. Don't use any tools to begin with, because you're more likely to cross thread it. If it goes in by hand, a good few turns, you can be sure you've got it in straight and you can use a tool. Depending on your pedal, you can either use an Allen key in the back of the pedal, or you can use a pedal spanner. Pedal spanners are pretty slim, so they can fit easily on the flats on the pedal, and they're pretty long as well, so you can get the required leverage. That's the pedal in place. Most other threads on a bike use a right-hand thread, so they tighten in a clockwise manner. This bolt, for instance, for the bottle boss, put a bit of anti-sieze on there again. Tightens clockwise. Good way to remember it is a silly saying, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So we're rotating the tool round to the right in a clockwise manner to tighten it. Grease comes into play when it comes to lubricating bearings. Invest in a decent quality waterproof grease, and do yourself a favour and get yourself a grease gun as well, because it makes it a lot easier to apply, it's much less messy, and you'll waste less grease as well. So it's an all-round good thing. Loctite is incredibly handy stuff to have around. The most commonly used on a bike is this stuff, which is Loctite 243, which is a blue colour, and it's a medium strength locking compound. We use it on threads to help stop them from vibrating loose. Critical bolts, such as the bolts that hold your brakes on, key areas that you should be using this stuff. One major problem that people have when they use Loctite is they don't clean the bolt properly enough. The threads need to be absolutely spotless. The best thing to clean them is alcohol. So with some alcohol we can really clean any grease and oil off the threads, and any old Loctite as well. Remove as much of that as you can, and that will really improve the performance of the Loctite. Now, Loctite's great stuff, but it's also pretty nasty. You don't want to be getting it on your hands. Just a small amount on the thread is needed. We screw that into place, and that will help the bolt stay put. Torque wrenches are really handy to have around. There's certain components on a bike that are pretty critical when it comes to the tightening torque. The main areas that I use a torque wrench, and the ones which most people I think should concentrate on, are bars and stems and Hollowtech 2 chain sets. There's a couple of important rules when it comes to using a torque wrench. If you want it to stay calibrated for as long as possible, and you do because it's expensive to get them calibrated and a bit of a pain, you want to make sure you back the torque wrench off to 0 when you've finished using it. Also, it's a good idea to just use your torque wrench for tightening bolts and don't use it for undoing bolts. That way it should last you as long as possible. You don't need a torque wrench to cover a huge torque range. I'd go for something between, say, 0 and 20 Newton meters. That will cover pretty much everything that you need to torque up on your bike. Here we're going to use it to torque this stem. Handily, Giant have written the torque setting on there, just 6 Newton meters. So we wind this onto the torque wrench. Set it exactly. That's set to break away at 6 Newton meters. Different torque wrenches work in different ways. This one breaks away slightly. Some digital ones will give an audible sound. When you tighten any stem, it's important that you have equal gaps, top and bottom. That's true for pretty much all manufacturers. Eastern differ. I think pretty much everyone else requires an equal gap, top and bottom. We torque up the bolts. Evenly, top and bottom. We can see that they are all torqued to 6 Newton meters. So it's how the guesswork basically. Using a torque wrench to tighten your bars into place is especially important if you've got carbon fibre bars, because if you do over tighten them, you'll crack them and then they're knackered. When we tighten up the bolts on a Hollowtech 2 chain set, as I've said, it's important to use a torque wrench. The maximum setting is 14 Newton meters. That's what I recommend that you use. Tighten each bolt a bit at a time. If you put the full 14 Newton meters into one bolt, whilst the other one's loose, you'll put a lot of strain onto it and you could risk damaging the threads. So just do them bit by bit until they both reach 14 and you'll be fine. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you learned something there. Hopefully there's something for everyone. And see you next time. Cheers. See ya.